The small diner. On the corner of Broad Street and Magnolia Avenue. Wasn't much to look at but for Latoya. It was her second home. The flickering neon sign outside that read, Marcy's Diner might have turned away passers-by. But inside the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee greeted anyone who entered. Latoya had been working here for 7 years. And while the pay wasn't great, she took pride in treating every customer like family. Latoya was known for her warm smile and her uncanny ability to sense when someone was having a rough day. She worked the morning shifts, often arriving before sunrise to prep for the breakfast rush. Her boss, Mr. Harper, ran the diner with a strict hand, constantly reminding the staff to stick to the basics and avoid wasting time on unnecessary niceties. To him, time was money, and every second Latoya spent chatting with customers or offering extra napkins felt like a wasted opportunity. It was a Thursday morning, just after the morning rush had died down. Latoya had barely finished refilling the coffee pots when a man walked in. He wasn't the diner's usual type of customer. No blue-collar uniform. No familiar face from the neighborhood. He was dressed in a sharp, albeit wrinkled suit, his tie slightly askew. He looked out of place, but more than that, he looked lost. Latoya watched him as he hesitated near the door. His eyes darted around the room before settling on a booth in the corner. He moved slowly, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Something about his demeanor struck her. She grabbed a menu and approached his table. "Good morning, sir," she said warmly, placing the menu in front of him. "Can I get you started with some coffee?" The man glanced up at her, his face tired and drawn. "Just water, please," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Latoya nodded and returned a moment later with a glass of water. "You take your time," she said softly. "If you need anything, just let me know." As she walked back to the counter, she caught Mr. Harper glaring at her. "Latoya," he said sharply, his voice low but firm, "we don't have time to cater to loiterers. If he's not ordering, he needs to leave." Her stomach tightened. She hated how Mr. Harper always seemed to judge people based on appearances. "He's just deciding," she said evenly, keeping her voice calm. "You've got tables to clean." Mr. Harper snapped, "Focus on paying customers." Latoya turned away, biting her tongue. She hated confrontation, but something about the man's quiet demeanor made her feel like she couldn't ignore him. She knew what it was like to feel invisible, to have people look right through you. She wasn't about to do that to him. Over the next few minutes, she found small ways to offer kindness. She refilled his water without being asked. When she saw him fidgeting with his tie, she brought him a napkin and said, "You look like you've had a rough morning. Let me know if I can get you something warm." The man gave her a faint smile, and for a moment, she thought she saw a glimmer of gratitude in his eyes. He eventually ordered a small breakfast, just toast and scrambled eggs, and ate in silence. Latoya didn't pry, but she kept an eye on him, ready to help if he needed it. When he finished, he stood and reached into his pocket, but his hand came up empty. His face flushed with embarrassment as he muttered, I seem to have forgotten my wallet." Before Mr. Harper could notice, Latoya stepped in. "It's okay," she said quickly, "I've got this one." The man's eyes widened. "I can't let you." "It's just eggs and toast," she said with a shrug, trying to make it sound casual. "Consider it a kindness." He stared at her for a long moment, as if searching for the right words. Finally he said, "Thank you truly." Latoya nodded and smiled, brushing it off like it was no big deal. But as the man left the diner, she felt Mr. Harper's eyes boring into her. She knew she was in trouble. "LaToya," he said. His tone cold. "My office now." LaToya followed Mr. Harper into his cramped office. At the back of the diner, the walls were lined with faded photographs and shelves crammed with old invoices. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and frustration. A fitting backdrop for what LaToya knew was coming. Mr. Harper didn't waste time. "What were you thinking giving that man a free meal?" he demanded, his voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the diner. "Outside, you know. We can't afford to hand out charity here." LaToya stood her ground, folding her arms across her chest. "He looked like he needed help." She said evenly, "It wasn't a big deal." "Not a big deal." Mr. Harper's face turned red. "Do you think this place runs on good intentions? You're here to work, not play savior." Her cheeks flushed with anger, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't see how a plate of eggs and toast is going to bankrupt the diner." "That's not the point," Mr. Harper snapped, slamming his hand down on the desk. "You undermined me in front of a customer, and now you're arguing with me. This isn't your personal charity operation, LaToya. If you can't follow the rules, maybe you don't belong here." The words hung in the air like a cloud of smoke, suffocating and inescapable. LaToya stared at him, her heart pounding. She thought about the years she'd spent working at the diner, long hours on her feet, dealing with difficult customers, cleaning up messes without complaint. All of it felt meaningless in this moment. "Fine," she said quietly, swallowing the lump in her throat. "If that's how you feel, I'll go." Mr. Harper blinked, clearly not expecting her to call his bluff. "You're fired," he said. After a pause, his voice lower now, but no less firm. "Pack up your things and leave. You can pick up your final paycheck at the end of the week." LaToya nodded. Refusing to let him see the tears welling up in her eyes. She turned and walked out of the office, her head held high. The other staff watched her in stunned silence as she grabbed her bag and coat. She didn't say goodbye, she didn't need to. As she stepped outside into the chilly morning air, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. She'd lost her job over a simple act of kindness. She felt a mixture of anger and sadness, but beneath it all was a quiet sense of resolve. She done what she believed was right, and no one could take that away from her. The walk home was long and quiet. LaToya lived in a small apartment above a laundromat a few blocks away. The place was modest but clean, with just enough room for her and her tabby cat Smokey. As she climbed the stairs to her front door, her legs felt heavier with each step. Inside, Smokey greeted her with a soft meow weaving between her legs. As she kicked off her shoes, LaToya sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. She replayed the morning in her mind, second-guessing herself at every turn. Had she made the right choice? Could she have handled things differently? The doubts gnawed at her, but deep down she knew she couldn't have ignored the man's obvious need for help. That night she lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, bills piled up in her mind, each one demanding an answer. She didn't have rent, was due in 2 weeks, and she didn't have a backup plan. Still, something in her heart told her that this wasn't the end of her story. It couldn't be. The next day she woke up early, determined to figure out her next steps, but just as she was pouring herself a cup of coffee, there was a knock at the door. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. She wasn't expecting anyone. Setting her mug down, she walked to the door and opened it cautiously, her breath caught in her throat when she saw who was standing there. It was him, the man from the diner, only now he didn't look lost or disheveled. He stood tall, his suit crisp and his expression calm but serious. In his hand was a small envelope. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm and steady. "I owe you an explanation. I owe you." LaToya's first instinct was to close the door. It wasn't that she was angry at the man, far from it, but the shock of seeing him again so soon made her hesitate. Still, there was something in his eyes, a quiet sincerity that made her pause. "May I come in?" he asked, holding the envelope up as if it were a peace offering. LaToya glanced at the envelope, then back at him. Finally she stepped aside. "Sure," she said cautiously, "but I hope you're not here to apologize for what happened. That wasn't your fault." The man stepped into her modest apartment, taking in the sparse but tidy living space. Smokey, ever the curious cat, padded over to inspect the visitor. The man crouched slightly, offering his hand. "Friendly little guy," he said with a small smile. LaToya folded her arms, watching him carefully. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but why are you here?" The man straightened up, his smile fading. First, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Jonathan Reeves, he said, and before I explain, I need you to know something. What you did yesterday meant more to me than you can imagine. Latoya frowned, unsure how to respond. I just brought you some eggs and toast, she said, her tone guarded. It wasn't anything special. That's where you're wrong, Jonathan replied. You treated me like a human being when I felt like nothing. Do you know how rare that is? Latoya shook her head, still unsure what to make of this conversation. What are you talking about? Jonathan took a deep breath and looked her in the eye. Yesterday I wasn't just some random guy walking into a diner. I was testing something, an experiment, if you will. An experiment, Latoya repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. What kind of experiment? I'm a businessman, Jonathan explained. I own several companies across the country, but recently I've been looking for something different. People keep telling me how disconnected I've become, how out of touch I am with the struggles of everyday life, so I decided to see for myself. I left my wallet at home, dressed down, and visited places like your diner to observe how people treat someone they think has nothing to offer. Latoya's eyes widened. So you're saying you were pretending? Jonathan nodded. I wanted to find someone genuine, someone who would help without expecting anything in return. And you, Latoya, you were that person. Her stomach churned with a mix of emotions. She didn't know whether to feel flattered or furious. So what, this was all just some kind of game to you? Not at all, Jonathan said quickly. It was never about tricking anyone. It was about finding people who still believe in kindness even when there's no reward in sight. And you, he paused, reaching into the envelope. You gave me hope. He handed her the envelope, and Latoya hesitated before taking it. Inside was a check, a number so large that her breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as she looked back at him. This can't be real, she whispered. It is, Jonathan said softly. It's not just a thank you, it's an investment in you. I believe you have something special and I want to help you use it. Latoya stared at the check, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to reject it outright. She wasn't the type to take handouts, but another part of her, the part that had spent the previous night worrying about rent and bills, knew this was a lifeline she couldn't ignore. I don't know what to say, she finally admitted. Say yes, Jonathan replied. Let me help you build something better for yourself. You deserve it. Latoya sat down on the couch, her hands gripping the check as if it might disappear. She couldn't stop staring at the number. It was more money than she'd ever imagined holding in her life. Smokey jumped up beside her, oblivious to the tension in the room, and nuzzled against her arm. It was a small comfort in the whirlwind of emotions flooding her mind. Jonathan took a seat across from her, his expression calm but earnest. I know this is a lot to take in, he said gently, and I don't expect you to make any decisions right now, but I want you to know why I'm doing this. Latoya raised her eyes to meet his, still struggling to process everything. Why me, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. There are so many people out there who need help more than I do. Jonathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Because you didn't see me as a problem to be solved. You didn't look at me like I was beneath you. You just helped. No questions, no judgment, just kindness. That's rare, Latoya, and it's something the world needs more of. His words hit her like a wave, washing over the doubts that had been building in her mind. She thought about her years at the diner, the countless times she'd stayed late to help a coworker or slipped a few dollars into the tip jar of a struggling busboy. None of it had ever felt like a big deal to her. It was just who she was. But now, sitting across from Jonathan, she realized that her small acts of kindness had ripples she couldn't have foreseen. What is it you want me to do, she asked finally, her voice steadier now. Jonathan smiled, relieved that she was open to hearing him out. That's up to you, he said. This isn't a loan or a contract, it's a gift, but if you are willing, I'd like to help you figure out how to use it in a way that makes a difference. Latoya blinked, caught off guard by his sincerity. You really mean that? I do, he said firmly, but I have one suggestion, something to think about. Have you ever thought about starting your own business? Her laugh was short and hollow. Me, a business? I don't even know where to start. That's where I come in, Jonathan replied. I have resources, connections, and experience. If you're willing to take the leap, I'll guide you every step of the way. Latoya's mind raced with possibilities. She thought about the things she'd always dreamed of doing but had written off as impossible: a catering business, a community center, maybe even a program to help others get back on their feet. The ideas felt distant, almost unreachable, but for the first time they didn't seem entirely out of the question. Still, a part of her hesitated. I don't want to feel like I owe you, she said, her tone cautious. You won't, Jonathan assured her. The only thing I ask is that you stay true to who you are. Use this gift to help others the same way you helped me. That's all. Latoya sat in silence for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the check. She thought about the diner, about Mr. Harper's scorn, and the way he dismissed her compassion as weakness. She thought about the man sitting across from her, a stranger who had seen something in her that she struggled to see in herself, and she thought about her future, the one she'd always imagined but never dared to chase. Finally, she looked up at Jonathan, a spark of determination in her eyes. Okay, she said, let's do this. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. Jonathan stayed true to his word, meeting with Latoya regularly to map out her dreams and turn them into a concrete plan. After countless conversations, brainstorming sessions, and a lot of encouragement, she decided on her path: a community cafe that would serve as both a business and a safe space for people in need. The cafe would offer affordable meals and host workshops for job seekers, financial literacy classes, and even community events. Latoya wanted it to be more than just a place to eat. She wanted it to be a beacon of hope for anyone who walked through the door. With Jonathan's financial backing and connections, things began to fall into place. They secured a space in a busy part of town, not fancy but big enough to house her vision. Contractors came in to renovate, and Latoya spent every spare moment planning menus, hiring staff, and spreading the word. When the grand opening day finally arrived, Latoya stood in the middle of the bustling cafe. Overwhelmed by the turnout, the place was filled with people from all walks of life, neighbors, old friends, and even strangers who had heard about her story. The air buzzed with excitement and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. Jonathan stood off to the side, a quiet smile on his face as he watched Latoya work the room. She moved with confidence, greeting each guest with the warmth and kindness that had always defined her. He knew she didn't need his guidance anymore. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Toward the end of the evening, Latoya took a moment to address the crowd standing near the counter, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She shared her journey. A year ago, I was just a waitress at a diner, she began, her eyes scanning the room. I thought that was all I'd ever be, but sometimes life surprises you. Sometimes a small act of kindness can lead to something bigger than you ever imagined. She paused, her gaze landing on Jonathan. I learned that kindness isn't a weakness. It's a strength, and it has the power to change lives, not just for the person receiving it but for the person giving it. The room erupted into applause, and Latoya felt a surge of gratitude. She had doubted herself so many times, but now, standing in her cafe surrounded by love and support, she knew she had made the right choice. As the night wound down, Jonathan approached her. You've done something incredible here, Latoya, he said, his voice quiet but full of pride. I couldn't have done it without you, she replied sincerely. He shook his head. You had it in you all along. I just gave you a little push. Latoya smiled, her heart full. Well, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Jonathan tipped his head in acknowledgement, then glanced around the bustling cafe. You're going to help a lot of people here. I hope you realize that I do, Latoya said, her voice soft but resolute. And I'm ready. The cafe became a cornerstone of the community, living up to Latoya's vision and then some. It wasn't just a place for meals, it was a place for second chances, for growth, and for connection. People came not only for the food but for the sense of belonging they found within its walls. And for Latoya, it was proof that staying true to her values, kindness, compassion, and resilience, was the greatest gift she could give, both to herself and to others. The journey wasn't always smooth. There were days when the cafe struggled to break even, when bills piled up and challenges seemed insurmountable, but Latoya's determination never wavered. She leaned on Jonathan's advice and the support of her staff and the community. Little by little, they found their footing. Soon the cafe's reputation began to grow, not just for the delicious food but for the spirit of generosity it embodied. Customers often paid it forward, leaving extra tips to cover meals for those who couldn't afford them. Local businesses began partnering with the cafe to sponsor workshops and events, creating a ripple effect of goodwill. One day, Latoya was approached by a woman named Sarah who had heard about the cafe's mission. Sarah was a single mother struggling to make ends meet, but she had a talent for baking. Latoya saw potential in her and offered her a part-time position at the cafe. It was a risk given their tight budget, but Latoya trusted her instincts. Sarah quickly became an invaluable member of the team. Her baked goods were a hit with customers, and she even started teaching baking classes on weekends. The change in Sarah's demeanor was palpable. She carried herself with newfound confidence and pride in her work. Seeing Sarah thrive reminded Latoya why she had started this journey in the first place. It wasn't just about running a successful business, it was about creating opportunities for others to succeed as well. Over time, Latoya's story began to attract attention. Local newspapers and bloggers wrote about the cafe's impact, and eventually a national news outlet picked up the story. Latoya was invited to share her experience on a morning talk show where she spoke passionately about the power of kindness and community. The exposure brought a wave of new customers and supporters to the cafe, ensuring its sustainability for years to come. But beyond the financial success, what mattered most to Latoya was the sense of purpose she felt every day. She woke up knowing she was making a difference in people's lives, just as Jonathan had done for her. She also never forgot where she came from and the lessons she had learned along the way. Despite her busy schedule, Latoya made time to volunteer at shelters and mentor young people in the community. She knew how easy it was to feel lost and invisible, and she wanted to be a source of light for others who were struggling. One evening, as she was closing up the cafe, Jonathan stopped by for a visit. They sat together at a corner table, reminiscing about how far they'd come. Do you ever think about what might have happened if we hadn't crossed paths? Jonathan asked. Latoya smiled. I do, she said softly, but I believe things happen for a reason. You walking into that diner changed my life, but it also reminded me that even small acts of kindness can have a big impact. Jonathan nodded. You remind me of that too. Every time I see what you've built here, it's a testament to what can happen when we believe in each other. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the cafe's windows. Latoya thought about all the people who had walked through those doors Each one carrying their own stories and struggles. She knew she couldn't change the world on her own, but she could create a space where people felt seen and valued, and that was enough. As Jonathan got up to leave, he turned to Latoya with a smile. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You should be proud of yourself too." She nodded, her heart full of gratitude and determination. "Thank you for everything, Jonathan." He waved it off. "You did the hard work, I just gave you a nudge." After he left, Latoya stood by the window, looking out at the bustling street below. She thought about her journey from a small diner on the corner of Broad Street and Magnolia Avenue to this moment in her own cafe, surrounded by a community she had helped to build. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it, and she knew this was only the beginning. She turned off the lights and locked up for the night. Her steps light as she walked home. Smokey greeted her at the door, as always, weaving between her legs with a soft meow. Latoya scooped him up and sat down on the couch, her heart full as she reflected on how far she'd come. Life had a way of surprising you. Sometimes it took a sharp turn to lead you to where you were meant to be, and Latoya was exactly where she was meant to be. The cafe continued to flourish, becoming not only a local favorite but a symbol of hope for the entire community. Latoya's vision of a space that nurtured both body and soul resonated deeply with people, and her story inspired others to follow their own dreams. She was often approached by individuals seeking advice or simply wanting to share how her journey had touched their lives. One day, Latoya received an email from a young woman named Carla who had recently lost her job and was struggling to support her two young children. Carla explained that she had always loved cooking but had never considered it as a career path. Reading about Latoya's story had sparked something in her, and she was reaching out for guidance. Latoya invited Carla to the cafe for a cup of coffee and a chat. As they sat together at a sunlit table, Carla shared her fears and aspirations, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Latoya listened intently, offering encouragement and practical advice. When their conversation ended, Latoya extended an invitation. "Why don't you come work with us part-time?" she suggested. "You can learn the ropes and see if this is something you want to pursue." Carla's eyes filled with tears of gratitude, and she accepted without hesitation. Over the next few months, Carla flourished under Latoya's mentorship. She not only gained confidence in the kitchen but also discovered a passion for creating dishes that brought people together. Her joy was infectious, and it reminded Latoya of her own journey, how taking a leap of faith had changed everything for her. Carla's story was just one of many. The cafe had become a haven for people looking for second chances, a place where they could rebuild their lives with dignity and support. Latoya often marveled at how a simple act of kindness could create ripples that reached far beyond what she could have imagined. As the years went by, the cafe expanded both in size and scope. Latoya opened a second location in a nearby neighborhood and began offering scholarships for culinary training funded by proceeds from the business and donations from the community. The scholarship program was a way to pay it forward, empowering others to pursue their dreams and build a better future. One recipient was a young man named Jamal who had grown up in foster care and struggled to find stability after aging out of the system. Despite his challenges, Jamal had a natural talent for cooking and an unshakable work ethic. With Latoya's support, he completed a culinary program and eventually became the head chef at one of her cafes. Seeing Jamal thrive brought Latoya immense pride. It was a reminder of the power of believing in someone even when the world had written them off. Latoya's success also caught the attention of larger organizations that shared her mission. She was invited to join panels and speak at conferences about the importance of community-driven initiatives. Her story was a testament to what could happen when people came together to lift one another up. During one such event, Latoya was approached by a representative from a national nonprofit that focused on food insecurity. They wanted to partner with her to create a network of community cafes across the country that combined affordable meals with resources for personal and professional growth. The proposal was both exciting and daunting. Latoya knew it would be a massive undertaking, but she also recognized the potential to make an even greater impact. After careful consideration, she agreed to collaborate with the nonprofit, launching a pilot program that mirrored the model she had created in her own community. The initiative was a resounding success, bringing hope and opportunity to underserved areas and reinforcing the idea that kindness and compassion could be powerful forces for change. Despite her growing responsibilities, Latoya remained deeply connected to her roots. She continued to work at her original cafe, spending time with her staff and greeting customers with the same warmth that had defined her from the start. She knew that her journey wasn't just about building a business, it was about fostering a sense of belonging and reminding people of their inherent worth. One evening, as she was closing up the cafe, she noticed a familiar figure standing outside. It was Mr. Harper, her former boss from the diner where her story had begun. He looked hesitant as he approached the door, but Latoya opened it with a welcoming smile. "Mr. Harper," she said warmly, "it's been a long time. What brings you here?" He stepped inside, glancing around the cozy space, his expression a mix of curiosity and regret. "I heard about what you've built here," he said, his voice quieter than she remembered. "I wanted to see it for myself." Latoya gestured for him to sit and offered him a cup of coffee. As they sat across from each other, she could see the years etched into his face. The stern demeanor she had once resented seemed to have softened over time. "You Did well, Latoya, he said after a moment, his eyes scanning the bustling cafe. I always knew you were good with people, but this is something special. Latoya smiled. Thank you, that means a lot coming from you. They talked for a while, reminiscing about the diner and the lessons they had both learned along the way. Mr. Harper admitted that he had been too focused on the bottom line to see the bigger picture. His tone was tinged with regret but also with admiration for what Latoya had achieved. By the end of their conversation, Latoya felt a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. Seeing Mr. Harper acknowledge her journey and the impact of her choices was a reminder of how far she had come. As he left that evening, he turned to her with a rare smile. You've done something remarkable, Latoya. Never forget that. She nodded, her heart full of gratitude and determination. Thank you, Mr. Harper. That night, as she walked home, Latoya reflected on the twists and turns of her journey. She thought about the people who had walked through her life, each one leaving an imprint that had shaped her into the person she had become. She knew there would always be challenges ahead, but she also knew she had the strength to face them, because at the heart of her story was a simple truth: kindness had the power to transform lives, hers included, and that was a legacy worth building upon. As the years went by, Latoya's impact continued to grow. Her cafes became more than just places to eat, they were community hubs where people could find support, education, and opportunities. The scholarship program expanded, helping dozens of individuals pursue careers in the culinary arts and beyond. Latoya also began partnering with local schools, offering internships and mentorship programs for students interested in hospitality and business. Her story inspired countless others to believe in the power of kindness and resilience. One day, Latoya received an invitation to speak at a prestigious event honoring leaders in social entrepreneurship. The letter mentioned how her work had not only revitalized her local community but also set a standard for others across the country. As she stood on stage that evening, looking out at an audience of influential figures, she felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility. She shared her journey from the diner to where she stood now, emphasizing the importance of empathy and the ripple effects of small acts of kindness. The standing ovation she received reaffirmed her belief that she was on the right path. After the event, Latoya was approached by a young woman named Amelia who had been deeply moved by her speech. Amelia shared that she had been struggling to find purpose in her life, and hearing Latoya's story had inspired her to start volunteering at a local shelter. They talked for hours, and by the end of their conversation, Amelia expressed her desire to open a community center similar to Latoya's cafes. Latoya offered her guidance and mentorship, knowing firsthand how daunting it could be to take that first step. Amelia's journey reminded Latoya of her own beginnings, and she felt grateful to be in a position to pay it forward. As Latoya's influence expanded, so did her team. She hired individuals who shared her vision, and together they worked tirelessly to bring new ideas to life. One of the most ambitious projects they undertook was a traveling food truck that brought meals and resources to underserved communities in rural areas. The food truck was equipped with a small kitchen and space for workshops, allowing Latoya's team to provide not just food but also education and support to those who needed it most. The project was a resounding success, reaching thousands of people who might otherwise have been overlooked. Latoya's work also began to attract attention on a global scale. She was invited to attend international conferences where she shared her insights and learned from others who were tackling similar challenges around the world. During one such trip, she visited a small village in another country where a group of women had started a cooperative to support their families. Despite the language barrier, Latoya felt a deep connection to their struggles and determination. She returned home inspired to expand her efforts beyond her own borders. Back in her community, Latoya's original cafe remained at the heart of everything she did. It was a constant reminder of where she had started and the values that had guided her journey. One afternoon, as she was clearing tables, a young boy approached her with a shy smile. He handed her a handwritten note that read, "Thank you for making this place, it makes me happy." Latoya felt a lump form in her throat as she read the note. It was a simple gesture, but it encapsulated everything she had worked for, creating a space where people felt seen, valued, and loved. As Latoya's legacy grew, so did her sense of gratitude. She never forgot the man who had walked into the diner that fateful day. Jonathan Reeves remained a trusted advisor and friend. They often met to discuss new ideas and reflect on how far they had come. During one of their conversations, Jonathan shared how much he had learned from watching Latoya's journey. "You taught me that success isn't just about profits," he said. "It's about people, about making a difference." Latoya smiled. "You taught me to believe in myself, Jonathan. I couldn't have done any of this without your support." Their bond was a testament to the power of believing in one another and the impact that belief could have on the world. Years later, as Latoya stood outside one of her cafes watching the bustling activity inside, she felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. She had turned her pain into purpose, her doubts into determination, and her dreams into reality. She had created something that would outlive her, a legacy of kindness, compassion, and resilience that would continue to inspire others long after she was gone. With Smokey by her side, now an old but spry companion, LaToya walked home that evening, her heart full of gratitude. She knew that her journey wasn't over. There were still challenges to face and dreams to chase, but she also knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, and that was enough for her for now. As the seasons changed and the years continued to pass, LaToya's work became a cornerstone of the community. Her cafes were not just establishments. They were movements. Each location was a hub of activity filled with laughter, shared stories, and the warmth of people coming together to support one another. LaToya's vision of creating spaces that offered more than just food had blossomed into something much greater than she had ever anticipated. One day, LaToya received an unexpected visit from a local high school teacher named Mrs. Bennett. The teacher explained that many of her students came from low-income families and often struggled with not only academic challenges but also access to basic necessities like meals and mentorship. Mrs. Bennett asked if LaToya would be willing to partner with the school to create an after-school program that combined tutoring with meal support. LaToya was moved by the idea and immediately agreed. She worked with her team to set up a program that allowed students to come to the cafes after school for healthy meals and tutoring sessions led by volunteers. The program quickly became a lifeline for many families, and its success spurred LaToya to expand the initiative to other schools in the area. Over time, LaToya's influence began to extend into policymaking. Her success and the measurable impact of her work drew the attention of local officials, who invited her to join task forces focused on addressing food insecurity and community development. LaToya used her platform to advocate for systemic changes, speaking passionately about the need for policies that supported small businesses, education, and social programs. Her voice became a powerful one in the fight for equity and opportunity. As LaToya's work continued to gain recognition, she was approached by a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell her story. The filmmaker, a woman named Elena, had been following LaToya's journey for years and believed it was a story that needed to be shared with the world. Initially hesitant, LaToya eventually agreed, realizing that the documentary could inspire others to believe in the power of kindness and community. The filming process was both challenging and rewarding. Cameras followed LaToya through her daily life, capturing moments of triumph and struggle. The documentary highlighted not just the success of the cafes but also the personal sacrifices and hard work that had gone into building them. When the documentary premiered, it was met with widespread acclaim. Audiences were deeply moved by LaToya's story and her unwavering commitment to helping others. The film sparked a wave of support for her work, bringing in donations and volunteers who wanted to be part of her mission. Despite the growing attention and accolades, LaToya remained grounded. She continued to work alongside her staff, often spending long hours at the cafes greeting customers and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Her humility and dedication were a constant reminder to everyone around her of what truly mattered. One day, LaToya was surprised to see a familiar face walk through the doors of her original cafe. It was Carla, the single mother she had hired years ago. Carla now ran her own successful catering business and had come to thank LaToya for believing in her. LaToya was deeply moved as Carla shared how her time at the cafe had given her the confidence and skills to pursue her dreams. Seeing Carla's success reaffirmed everything LaToya had worked for. She had always believed that kindness could change lives, and Carla was living proof. As the years went by, LaToya began to think about the future of her cafe. She knew that her vision had grown beyond her, and she wanted to ensure that the work would continue even after she was gone. She began mentoring a new generation of leaders, people who shared her passion and values and who would carry on the mission she had started. One of those leaders was Jamal, the young man who had once been a scholarship recipient. He had grown into a confident and skilled chef, and LaToya saw in him the same determination and kindness that had guided her journey. Jamal eventually took on a leadership role within the organization, helping to expand the cafes and their programs to new communities. LaToya also started a foundation focused on providing grants and resources to grassroots organizations with similar missions. She wanted to empower others to create their own ripple effects of kindness and compassion. The foundation became a beacon of hope, supporting projects that ranged from community gardens to job training programs. LaToya's legacy continued to grow, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined in her later years. LaToya often found herself reflecting on the twists and turns of her journey. She thought about the diner where it had all begun, the act of kindness that had cost her a job but given her a purpose. She thought about Jonathan Reeves, the man who had seen her potential and given her the chance to change her life. Most of all, she thought about the countless people who had walked through the doors of her cafes, each one bringing their own story, their own struggles, and their own hopes. One evening, as she sat on the porch of her home watching the sunset, she felt a deep sense of peace. Smokey, now a frail but content companion, purred softly in her lap. LaToya knew that her journey had been far from ordinary, but it had been hers. Every challenge, every triumph, every moment of doubt and determination had led her to this place. She smiled to herself, knowing that the seeds of kindness she had planted would continue to grow long after she was gone, and in the end that was all she could have ever hoped for. LaToya's legacy continued to bloom even after she began stepping back from day-to-day operations. The cafes she had nurtured became models for community-centered businesses, inspiring others across the nation and beyond. Her foundation flourished, enabling small community projects to grow into impactful initiatives. As word spread about the work being done under her name, more people began to reach out, not just for support but also to share how they had been inspired by her story. One such individual was a young man named Raphael, who had recently opened a small soup kitchen in his hometown. He explained in a heartfelt letter how LaToya's story had motivated him to leave a corporate job and dedicate his life to helping others. He wrote, "You showed me that compassion can be a powerful business model, and it's one I hope to follow." Touched by his sincerity, LaToya invited Raphael to visit one of her cafes, where they spent hours exchanging ideas and dreams for the future. In her later years, LaToya began traveling more frequently, visiting communities where her foundation had made an impact. Each visit reminded her of the power of collective action. She met farmers who had benefited from sustainable agriculture grants, single mothers running small businesses with the help of microloans, and students who had pursued higher education through her scholarship programs. These moments filled her with profound gratitude and affirmed her belief that small acts of kindness could create profound change. One of the most memorable moments came during a visit to a remote town where her foundation had funded a community center. As LaToya stepped into the vibrant space, she was greeted by a group of children holding handmade thank you cards. The walls were adorned with murals depicting scenes of community life, including a tribute to LaToya herself, a painting of her welcoming a customer at the counter of her first cafe. The sight brought tears to her eyes, and she spent hours talking with the residents, learning about their lives and dreams. Back home, LaToya found joy in mentoring the next wave of social entrepreneurs. She hosted workshops and retreats, sharing her wisdom with young leaders eager to make a difference. One recurring theme in her teachings was the importance of authenticity. "Always stay true to who you are," she often said. "Success isn't measured by wealth or accolades but by the impact you have on others." As the years passed, LaToya's story became a part of local folklore. Children learned about her in school, and her cafes were seen as living testaments to the power of community and kindness. Statues were erected in her honor, not because of her fame but because of the values she represented: compassion, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the good of people. Toward the end of her life, LaToya spent more time reflecting and writing. She penned a memoir, aptly titled Ripples of Kindness, in which she recounted her journey with honesty and humility. The book became a bestseller, touching hearts worldwide and inspiring countless readers to take their own steps toward creating positive change. One quiet evening, surrounded by family and close friends, LaToya celebrated her 80th birthday. The gathering was held at her original cafe, now a cherished landmark. As she looked around at the faces of those she loved and the walls filled with memories of her journey, she felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Jamal, now the CEO of the foundation, raised a toast in her honor. "To LaToya, who taught us that kindness isn't just an act but a way of life. Your legacy will continue to inspire us all." LaToya smiled, her heart full. Though she knew her time was nearing its end, she felt no fear, only gratitude for the life she had lived and the lives she had touched. When LaToya passed away peacefully in her sleep a few years later, the world mourned her loss but celebrated her extraordinary life. Vigils were held at her cafes, where people shared stories of how she had inspired them. Her foundation was renamed the LaToya Davis Legacy Foundation, ensuring that her work would continue for generations. Even in her absence, LaToya's impact remained palpable. Her story became a symbol of hope for those facing adversity, a reminder that one person's kindness could spark a movement. And as new leaders carried her vision forward, they kept her words close to their hearts: kindness is the seed. Nurture it, and it will grow beyond your wildest dreams. The legacy LaToya left behind became a guiding star for communities and organizations worldwide. Her foundation expanded its reach, partnering with international NGOs to create community-driven cafes and support networks in underserved regions. These new projects carried her philosophy at their core, providing not just nourishment but also a sense of dignity and empowerment. Her story was incorporated into educational programs, inspiring a new generation of socially conscious leaders. Schools and universities began using her memoir, Ripples of Kindness, as part of their curriculum, teaching students the value of compassion, resilience, and the ripple effects of small, selfless actions. LaToya's name became synonymous with the transformative power of empathy, and her life's work served as a case study for how community-focused initiatives could bring about systemic change. Jamal, as CEO of the LaToya Davis Legacy Foundation, continued to carry her vision forward with remarkable dedication. He introduced innovative programs aimed at addressing modern challenges, such as food deserts and youth unemployment. Under his leadership, the foundation launched a mentorship network that paired aspiring entrepreneurs with seasoned mentors, creating a pipeline for future leaders who embodied LaToya's values. One of the most impactful initiatives was the establishment of LaToya's Academy for Social Change, a training center that offered courses in community leadership, sustainable business practices, and culinary arts. The Academy welcomed individuals from all walks of life, providing them with the tools and resources needed to create their own ripple effects of kindness. Graduates of the Academy went on to launch successful projects in their communities, further spreading LaToya's philosophy of empowering others through compassion. Around the world, people began celebrating LaToya Davis Day, an annual event dedicated to performing acts of kindness and supporting community initiatives. On this day, cafes and organizations affiliated with the foundation would host free meals, workshops, and fundraising events, uniting people in a shared mission to make the world a better place. Social media lit up with stories of kindness, all tied back to the inspiration that LaToya had provided. Back in her hometown, LaToya's original cafe remained a cherished landmark. Visitors from across the globe came to see the place where her journey had begun, leaving notes of gratitude and admiration on a designated wall of remembrance. Her family, friends, and former staff members often gathered there, keeping her memory alive and sharing stories about her remarkable journey. One day, Jamal was approached by a young woman named Rosa, who had traveled thousands of miles to visit the cafe. Rosa had started a small community garden project in her home country after reading Ripples of Kindness and wanted to express her gratitude. She told Jamal, "LaToya's story gave me the courage to believe in my dream. She reminded me that even the smallest acts of kindness can grow into something extraordinary." Hearing stories like Rosa's reaffirmed Jamal's commitment to carrying LaToya's legacy forward. He often reflected on how her simple act of helping a stranger at the diner had set everything in motion. It was a powerful reminder that great change often begins with small, intentional choices. As the foundation celebrated its 25th anniversary, its impact was undeniable. It had helped millions of people find hope, purpose, and opportunity. The anniversary gala was held at a large venue, where leaders from around the world gathered to honor LaToya's memory and the work she had inspired. A statue of her was unveiled at the event, capturing her warm smile and the welcoming gesture she had offered to everyone who walked through her doors. Jamal delivered a heartfelt speech that evening. LaToya taught us that the world is changed not by grand gestures but by the consistent, everyday kindness we show to one another. Her life was a testament to the idea that we all have the power to make a difference. Let us honor her by continuing to spread kindness wherever we go. The applause that followed was thunderous, a fitting tribute to a woman whose life had touched so many. LaToya's influence continued to ripple outward, her story woven into the fabric of countless lives. Through her cafes, her foundation, and the people she had inspired, her light shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow. And though she was no longer physically present, her spirit lived on in every act of kindness, every shared meal, and every dream that was given a chance to flourish because of her unwavering belief in the power of compassion. The years turned into decades, and LaToya Davis's legacy became an enduring symbol of hope and transformation. Her cafes, now numbering in the hundreds, span countries and continents, each one a sanctuary for people seeking nourishment, community, and opportunity. These spaces were not just businesses but lifelines, places where the lonely found connection, the struggling found support, and the hopeless rediscovered their strength. In her hometown, a museum was established in LaToya's honor, housed in the original cafe where her journey began. The LaToya Davis Museum of Kindness became a pilgrimage site for those inspired by her story. The museum preserved artifacts from her life, a copy of the check Jonathan Reeves had given her, photographs of her with community members, and even Smokey's old collar. Interactive exhibits told her story, highlighting the ripple effects of her work and encouraging visitors to reflect on how they, too, could make a difference. Every year, the foundation hosted a global summit for kindness and innovation. The summit brought together changemakers, philanthropists, and everyday heroes to share ideas and collaborate on initiatives that could address pressing global issues. LaToya's name was a beacon at these events, her teachings a foundation for the solutions being created. It became a space where ideas were born, friendships forged, and lives forever changed. LaToya's Academy continued to expand, establishing satellite campuses in underserved areas worldwide. Each campus bore her name and upheld her values, providing education and training to those who had the potential to lead but lacked the resources to begin. Graduates of the Academy often referred to themselves as LaToya's Dreamers, a testament to how her vision had inspired them to chase their aspirations and give back to their communities. One particularly poignant project emerged from a group of LaToya's Dreamers. They launched the Kindness Collective, a network of mobile units delivering food, healthcare, and education to refugee camps in disaster-stricken areas. The collective's motto, "Start with a meal, build a future," encapsulated LaToya's philosophy, and their work saved countless lives while restoring dignity to those in desperate situations. Back at home, Jamal, now nearing retirement, reflected on the remarkable growth of the foundation and LaToya's legacy. He often visited the museum, finding solace in the memories of their shared journey. On one such visit, he encountered a young girl named Mia, who was staring at a mural depicting LaToya's life story. Mia, holding her mother's hand, turned to Jamal and said, "I want to be like her when I grow up. I want to help people." Jamal knelt down and looked her in the eyes, his voice filled with warmth. "You can, Mia." LaToya believed that anyone, no matter where they come from, can change the world with kindness. "You already have what it takes." The moment brought tears to his eyes, a reminder of the profound and lasting impact LaToya had made. Her story continued to inspire not only those who had known her but also new generations who encountered her legacy for the first time. As LaToya's centennial approached, the world prepared to celebrate her life in grand fashion. The foundation announced plans to create a global kindness fund, a perpetual endowment to support grassroots initiatives worldwide. The fund would ensure that LaToya's vision of empowerment and community support would continue to thrive for centuries to come. On the day of the centennial celebration, people from all corners of the world gathered to honor LaToya. Events were held in cafes, community centers, and public spaces, with stories shared, meals served, and acts of kindness performed in her name. The celebrations culminated in a live broadcast featuring testimonials from those whose lives had been changed by LaToya's work. Jamal, now retired but still a guiding voice within the foundation, delivered a final tribute. Standing in the original cafe, he spoke to a global audience. LaToya's legacy is not just about what she built but about how she made us believe in the goodness within ourselves. She taught us that one act of kindness can change a life and that life can change the world. Let us continue to carry her light forward. As he finished, the broadcast cut to scenes from around the world, people holding hands, sharing meals, and performing acts of kindness in LaToya's honor. Her name was spoken with reverence and love, a universal reminder of the power of compassion. Though LaToya Davis had left the world many years before, her presence remained in every smile, every hug, and every moment of generosity. Her legacy was proof that a single spark of kindness could ignite a flame that burned bright across generations, lighting the way for a better, kinder world. Decades after her passing, LaToya Davis's legacy had grown into a global movement that was deeply embedded in the fabric of societies across the world. Her name became synonymous with kindness, resilience, and the power of community-driven change. Statues of LaToya graced public squares, her quotes adorned classroom walls, and her story continued to inspire books, films, and songs. The LaToya Davis Legacy Foundation, under the stewardship of new generations of leaders, evolved into one of the most influential humanitarian organizations in history. Its reach extended to nearly every corner of the globe, addressing issues ranging from hunger and poverty to education and healthcare. Through its innovative programs, millions of lives were touched each year, and countless individuals found the strength to overcome adversity. One of the foundation's most celebrated projects was the LaToya Davis Global Exchange Program. This initiative brought together young leaders from different countries to share their knowledge, experiences, and dreams. Participants spent months learning about LaToya's principles of kindness and community building, then returned to their own communities to implement transformative projects. The program created a network of changemakers who upheld LaToya's values while addressing unique local challenges. The impact of Latoya's story was particularly evident in a remote village in Southeast Asia. Inspired by her life, a group of women had formed a cooperative that combined agriculture with education. They cultivated crops and used the proceeds to build a school for their children, ensuring that the next generation had opportunities they themselves had never been afforded. The women often spoke of Latoya as their guiding star, her story reminding them that small beginnings could lead to great change. Meanwhile, back in her hometown, Latoya's original cafe had become a symbol of hope and a pilgrimage site for dreamers worldwide. Every year, thousands of visitors walked through its doors, leaving behind messages of gratitude and pledges to spread kindness. The cafe's walls were covered with handwritten notes, photographs, and mementos from people whose lives had been touched by Latoya's work. One of the most moving stories came from a single father named Marco, who had once been homeless. He credited the cafe's scholarship program with giving him the chance to pursue a degree in social work. Years later, Marco had returned to the foundation as a counselor, helping others who faced the same struggles he once had. He often shared his journey during community events, inspiring others to believe in the power of second chances. On the 50th anniversary of Latoya's passing, a global commemoration was held in her honor. Millions of people participated in acts of kindness, from hosting free meals to planting community gardens. The event was marked by a moment of silence, during which people from different cultures, religions, and walks of life paused to reflect on her enduring message: kindness can change the world. The celebration also included the unveiling of the Latoya Davis Center for Innovation and Compassion, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to finding sustainable solutions to global challenges. The center brought together scientists, entrepreneurs, and humanitarian leaders to collaborate on projects that embodied Latoya's spirit of inclusion and empathy. Jamal, who had long since retired but remained an honorary figure in the foundation, attended the ceremony. Now in his later years, he stood before the crowd and spoke of the Latoya he had known, the humble woman whose small acts of kindness had sparked a revolution. Latoya always believed in the extraordinary potential within ordinary people, he said. Her legacy reminds us that we all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small the gesture. As Jamal stepped down, the crowd erupted into applause. Among them were people from every corner of the world: leaders, educators, artists, and everyday citizens, each carrying a piece of Latoya's light within them. In the years that followed, the foundation continued to thrive, adapting to the needs of an ever-changing world while staying true to its core mission. Latoya's story was passed down through generations, a timeless reminder of the power of kindness, courage, and determination. And so, the ripples Latoya had set into motion so many years ago continued to spread, touching lives, inspiring change, and proving that one person's compassion could indeed transform the world. As Latoya Davis's legacy stretched across generations, her story became a cornerstone of the global narrative about the power of kindness and the resilience of the human spirit. Her name appeared in history books, her quotes adorned motivational speeches, and her impact was studied in classrooms and universities worldwide. One of the most remarkable aspects of her enduring influence was the Latoya Davis Global Kindness Network. This expansive initiative connected individuals, organizations, and communities committed to fostering compassion and empathy in their daily lives. The network served as a platform for sharing ideas, providing resources, and mobilizing support for initiatives that embodied Latoya's philosophy. It became a powerful force for good, facilitating collaborations that addressed critical issues like climate change, mental health, and inequality. The network's annual gatherings, known as Kindness Summits, drew thousands of participants. These events celebrated Latoya's life and work, showcased successful community-driven projects, and encouraged attendees to carry her mission forward. Each summit began with a tradition that had become sacred to the movement: a moment of reflection during which participants were encouraged to perform a simple act of kindness for someone nearby. These moments, filled with smiles and gratitude, exemplified the spirit of the gatherings and reminded everyone of the profound impact small gestures could have. One notable success story from the network was the creation of Latoya Villages. These were self-sustaining communities built in areas affected by poverty or disaster. Designed with the input of local residents, each village offered housing, education, healthcare, and job training. The villages were funded by the Latoya Davis Foundation and supported by the Kindness Network's extensive resources. Over time, these villages transformed struggling regions into thriving hubs of innovation and resilience, embodying Latoya's belief in the power of empowerment. In her hometown, the Latoya Davis Museum of Kindness continued to draw visitors, but it also evolved into an interactive space for education and engagement. The museum added programs for children, teaching them about empathy and community building through workshops and storytelling. The Latoya Davis Children's Wing became a beloved part of the museum, where young minds were inspired to dream big and act with kindness. One day, a school group visited the museum, and a little girl named Sophie stood transfixed before a mural depicting Latoya serving a meal in her first cafe. The guide asked Sophie what she thought of Latoya's story, and the girl replied with wide eyes, "She reminds me that even when you feel small, you can do big things if you care about others." Sophie's words echoed the essence of Latoya's legacy and were a testament to the values she had instilled in countless hearts. Meanwhile, the Latoya Davis Academy for Social Change expanded its reach, introducing online courses that allowed students from remote areas to learn from her teachings. The Academy's curriculum emphasized practical skills, emotional intelligence, and ethical leadership, ensuring that graduates were equipped to address real-world challenges with empathy and innovation. The foundation also created a global archive of kindness stories, an online repository where people could share their experiences of compassion and community. These stories, written in dozens of languages, painted a vivid picture of humanity's capacity for goodness. They ranged from tales of small, everyday kindnesses to transformative acts that changed entire communities. The archive became a living testament to Latoya's belief that everyone had the power to make a difference. As her centennial celebrations faded into memory, the world continued to honor Latoya Davis in ways that reflected her spirit. Monuments were built in her name, but more importantly, movements were born in her honor. People everywhere carried her message forward, proving that kindness was not just a virtue but a catalyst for lasting change. Even in places where her name was not immediately recognized, her influence could be felt. A stranger helping another in need, a community coming together to rebuild, a child sharing a dream of making the world better, all of these acts bore the unmistakable mark of Latoya's enduring impact. Her story remained a beacon for humanity, a reminder that the smallest seeds of kindness could grow into forests of hope, resilience, and love. And in this way, Latoya Davis's light continued to shine, illuminating paths for generations yet to come. As generations passed, Latoya Davis's influence became woven into the very fabric of global culture. Her name was no longer just associated with a single person's story but represented a universal ideal, a call to action for humanity to choose kindness, courage, and community. The Latoya Davis Foundation evolved into a multifaceted organization that addressed challenges across the globe. Its initiatives expanded to include climate resilience projects, mental health awareness campaigns, and technological innovations aimed at bridging divides in education and healthcare. These programs always stayed true to Latoya's vision of empowering people to help themselves and one another. One of the Foundation's most ambitious projects was the Latoya Lighthouse Initiative, which aimed to create resource centers in some of the world's most remote and underserved areas. These centers provided food, education, healthcare, and internet access, acting as beacons of hope for communities often left behind. By connecting people to resources and opportunities, the initiative gave individuals the tools they needed to transform their own lives, just as Latoya's act of kindness had transformed hers. The foundation also launched an annual Latoya Davis Kindness Prize, awarded to individuals or organizations that had made extraordinary contributions to their communities. The recipients, hailed as modern-day changemakers, were celebrated for their innovative solutions and dedication to improving the lives of others. Many of them cited Latoya's story as their inspiration. Back in her hometown, the original cafe remained the beating heart of her legacy. It was no longer just a cafe, it was a living symbol of what one person could achieve with determination and compassion. The cafe became a training ground for young people entering the hospitality industry and a gathering place for community events. Every wall, every table, and every corner of the cafe told a story, serving as a reminder of the humble beginnings that had led to a global movement. The museum next door expanded its offerings, introducing virtual reality experiences that allowed visitors to step into pivotal moments of Latoya's life. These immersive exhibits helped people understand her struggles, her triumphs, and the choices she had made to stand by her values. Visitors left the museum not only inspired but also motivated to take action in their own lives. One particularly touching exhibit featured a recreation of the diner where Latoya had worked before her journey began. It was a place where visitors could hear her words of encouragement and imagine the fateful day when she chose kindness over fear. The exhibit also included testimonials from people whose lives had been changed by her story, underscoring the profound ripple effects of her actions. The LaToya Davis Academy continued to thrive, producing thousands of graduates who went on to lead impactful projects across the world. Many of these graduates became mentors themselves, perpetuating the cycle of support and empowerment that LaToya had championed. The Academy's motto, "Lead with Kindness," became a mantra for its students, a guiding principle that shaped their work and their lives. One of the Academy's most notable alumni, Amina, returned to her home country to address the issue of water scarcity. Inspired by LaToya's philosophy, Amina created a community-based solution that combines sustainable water management with education and employment opportunities. Her work earned her international recognition, and she often credited LaToya's story for giving her the courage to pursue her vision. As time went on, LaToya's teachings found their way into every corner of society. Schools incorporated her principles into their curricula, workplaces adopted her values into their cultures, and governments cited her initiatives as models for policymaking. Her story became a cornerstone of modern ethics, a reminder that compassion and practicality were not mutually exclusive but deeply interconnected. 100 years after her passing, the world came together to honor LaToya's bicentennial. Events were held in every major city, celebrating her enduring impact. In her hometown, a massive mural was unveiled, depicting her surrounded by the countless lives she had touched. Beneath it was a simple inscription: "One act of kindness can change the world." The celebration culminated in a global broadcast featuring testimonials from people whose lives had been changed by LaToya's legacy. Among them was a young boy named Leo, who had received support from a LaToya village after losing his family to a natural disaster. Now a successful engineer, Leo shared how the village had given him a second chance and inspired him to give back. "LaToya's kindness reached me, even though she never knew my name," he said. "And now, it's my turn to carry that kindness forward." As the broadcast ended, a collective moment of silence was observed. Across the world, people paused to reflect on LaToya's life and the lessons she had left behind. In that silence, her legacy spoke louder than words, resonating in hearts and minds everywhere. Though centuries had passed since that fateful day in the diner, LaToya Davis's light continued to shine. It shone in every meal shared, every hand extended in friendship, and every dream nurtured. Her legacy was a testament to the enduring power of kindness, a legacy that would live on for generations yet to come. As the decades rolled into centuries, LaToya Davis's legacy became a timeless cornerstone of global unity and human compassion. Her story evolved into more than a personal journey; it became a symbol of hope, taught in schools, celebrated in art, and referenced in movements for social change. The LaToya Davis Foundation became a force for humanity, its reach extending into areas of the world where hope was scarce. By this time, the foundation had introduced advanced technological solutions that seamlessly blended with its grassroots efforts. From solar-powered community centers to AI-assisted education hubs, the foundation ensured that every innovation served the purpose of uplifting people and reinforcing LaToya's core values of kindness and resilience. A particularly transformative project was the LaToya Davis Global Empathy Exchange, a digital platform that connected people from diverse backgrounds. Using virtual reality and storytelling, participants shared their experiences and challenges, fostering understanding and breaking down barriers. The program became a tool for bridging cultural divides and solving conflicts, inspired entirely by LaToya's ability to connect with others through simple, authentic kindness. The original cafe, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, stood as a tangible reminder of where it all began. Every detail of the cafe had been preserved, down to the counters where LaToya had served meals and the booth where Jonathan Reeves had sat that fateful day. Visitors left the cafe with renewed purpose, having walked through the spaces that had ignited a global movement. The cafe also served as the headquarters for the LaToya Davis Fellowship, a program that offered mentorship and funding to young leaders aspiring to create meaningful change in their communities. LaToya's story had also found its way into art and culture. Films, plays, and novels based on her life captivated audiences worldwide. Musicians wrote songs celebrating her journey, and painters depicted her as a modern-day saint of kindness. One of the most moving tributes was a symphony titled Ripples, performed by orchestras across the globe. The music encapsulated her life's work, starting with quiet, humble notes and building into a powerful crescendo that echoed her profound impact on humanity. The bicentennial of LaToya's birth saw an unprecedented celebration of her life and legacy. Cities around the world hosted festivals, workshops, and public acts of kindness. From feeding the hungry to planting trees, every activity reflected the values she had championed. Leaders from every continent gathered to honor her, many of whom had drawn inspiration from her story to shape their policies and initiatives. In her hometown, a massive holographic projection illuminated the night sky, retelling LaToya's journey through vibrant visuals and heartfelt narration. The display ended with an image of LaToya, her warm smile radiating as if to remind everyone of the power of simple, genuine compassion. A particularly touching moment during the celebrations came from a young girl named Elena, who had written a letter that captured the hearts of millions. "Dear LaToya," it began, "I know you're in heaven now, but your kindness still makes the world a better place. I want to be just like you when I grow up." Elena's words were a poignant reminder that even long after her passing, LaToya's influence continued to inspire future generations. The LaToya Davis Academy also expanded during the bicentennial celebrations, opening a campus on every continent. The new institutions incorporated advanced technologies while staying grounded in LaToya's principles of empathy, collaboration, and empowerment. A new curriculum was introduced, called Seeds of Change, which focused on practical methods for creating sustainable, compassionate communities. As humanity faced challenges of unprecedented scale, from environmental crises to societal inequalities, LaToya's legacy provided a moral compass. Her story was a reminder that solutions didn't have to start with grand gestures, they could begin with a single act of kindness. This ethos guided governments, organizations, and individuals, creating a ripple effect that spanned the globe. The world LaToya envisioned, a world where kindness was the foundation of progress, was becoming a reality. Her cafes, her foundation, and her teachings were no longer just about her, they were about everyone who carried her values forward. In the simplest of acts, from a stranger lending a helping hand to a leader making compassionate policy decisions, LaToya Davis's spirit lived on. Though centuries had passed, LaToya's name remained a symbol of humanity's potential to rise above division and despair. Her story continued to inspire, her lessons continued to guide, and her legacy continued to grow. LaToya Davis's light, born from one small act of kindness in a diner, now illuminated the path for a kinder, more united world, a legacy that would never fade. As time moved forward, the legacy of LaToya Davis became a foundation for generations to build upon, her philosophy of kindness embedded deeply in the core of global society. Humanity had progressed significantly, but the principles she had championed, compassion, connection, and resilience, remained as relevant as ever. Her story continued to guide decisions, inspire innovation, and unite people in ways that transcended time and culture. The LaToya Davis Global Network grew into an interstellar initiative as humanity expanded its reach into the cosmos. Colonies on other planets and space stations adopted her teachings as guiding principles for building cohesive and compassionate communities. Spaceships carried her story to new frontiers, with her quotes inscribed in the corridors of interstellar habitats. Kindness is the seed. Nurture it, and it will grow beyond your wildest dreams. The LaToya Davis Foundation evolved to address the needs of this expanded humanity. In addition to its terrestrial programs, it began creating support systems for settlers and pioneers venturing into unknown territories. These systems included communal hubs modeled after her original cafes, designed to foster connection and cooperation among diverse groups of people. The cafes, now called LaToya Beacons, became symbols of hope and unity even in the most remote parts of the galaxy. On Earth, her legacy took on new dimensions as technological advancements allowed for deeper exploration of her teachings. Artificial intelligence tools modeled after her philosophy were developed to assist communities in solving complex problems while ensuring that human empathy and values remained central to the decision-making process. These AI systems, affectionately named LaToyas, were praised for their ability to inspire collaboration and compassion in the face of challenges. In her hometown, now considered a historic site of global significance, the LaToya Davis Museum expanded once more to include a visionary wing dedicated to humanity's potential for positive change. It showcased not only her story but also the stories of countless individuals and communities who had been inspired by her work. The museum introduced a new exhibit called Ripples Through Time, which used immersive holography to show the interconnected impact of her legacy across centuries. One particularly moving feature of the exhibit allowed visitors to trace their own acts of kindness through a simulated ripple effect, showing how their choices could influence others. Visitors left the museum with a profound sense of responsibility and possibility, empowered to carry LaToya's light forward in their own lives. In education, LaToya's teachings became universal. Schools across the world and beyond included her philosophy as part of their core curriculum, fostering a culture of kindness and empathy from an early age. Children learned her story alongside lessons in science, history, and art, seeing it not just as a tale of inspiration but as a blueprint for how they could contribute to the world. One of the most profound milestones in honoring her legacy came during the celebration of the 500th anniversary of her birth. The event spanned Earth and its colonies, uniting humanity in a shared moment of gratitude and reflection. Virtual and physical gatherings featured global acts of kindness, with billions of people participating in service projects, charitable acts, and community-building activities. The highlight of the celebration was the unveiling of the LaToya Davis Galaxy Monument, a structure visible from space, representing the interconnectedness of all life and the enduring impact of kindness. Its design featured a spiraling beacon of light that pulsed gently, symbolizing the ripples of change that began with one simple act. During the dedication ceremony, a young leader from one of the newer colonies spoke these words, LaToya Davis taught us that no matter how far we journey, whether across oceans or stars, the foundation of who we are must always be kindness. Her light will guide us wherever we go. Asterisk. As humanity ventured further into the future, LaToya's legacy endured not as a relic of the past but as a living force that continued to shape the present and inspire the future. Her story, born from a simple act of kindness in a small diner, remained a testament to the power of compassion and the boundless potential of the human spirit. And so, the ripples she created expanded endlessly, carried forward by generations who understood that the greatest journeys begin with a single act of love. LaToya Davis's light would shine forever, a beacon for all who sought to build a kinder, more united universe.